Chicago, also performed there. Brad Simon is with me today. He's a white-collar criminal defense attorney. Doug Burns is a former federal prosecutor. Eric Bolling, you know him well, is a Fox Business contributor and the host of Happy Hour. All right, let me start with you, Brad. I know that the Attorney General's office is now bringing in Ken Lewis from Bank of America. They expect that they're going to get a deposition from him tomorrow or perhaps on Friday. What, if any, do you see as possible civil or criminal charges? What are they trying to get, do you think, from Ken Lewis here?
Well, I think they want to know what he knew about the Merrill Lynch situation, because if he knew something about Merrill Lynch's financial viability at the time that they agreed to this merger, and if he approved some of the bonuses, which I think Thane has made that argument that it was all approved, then he can be, Bank of America can be put into the mix as well as Merrill. I think Bank of America would like to distance themselves from whatever shortcomings Merrill Lynch.
So basically the charge would be that he was negligent in his due diligence for his shareholders because he might have known some of the bad news and not shared it with them.
Right. I think his position is he did not, and that's what he will probably continue to maintain. The question is, what did he know and when did he know it?
That's always the question, right? And it boils down to that right now. Eric Bolling, but you know, there's a lot of reporting out there that suggests that Ken Lewis was urged, arm-twisted, to take this deal. But in some cases, I have heard, but perhaps by Paulson himself, who said, you got to do this. If you're going to come back to the government for another dime, we want to see this merger happen, and you got to make it happen.
How's this? 100% accurate, Martha. There are banks that took money that they didn't want. Right. There are banks that were forced into mergers that they may not have wanted, but that's the real question. You really have to dig down to find out what went on behind the scenes. I'll never forget that Sunday night when Lehman Brothers failed. Bank of America, with open arms, it seemed, welcomed Merrill Lynch. Right. The question was, why? And they were literally paying $26 a share for Merrill Lynch. I think the closing price that Friday was like $16. We're going, right. The world's falling apart. Banks and brokers are falling apart, but you're going to pay a premium for Merrill Lynch in this environment. Yeah. Something didn't seem right. Now, if it comes back and says, hey, Hank Paulson, the Treasury Department, Tim Geithner, who may have been in on those meetings as well, forced us into this merger to stop some sort of systemic failure, then it'll be very enlightening to find out exactly how that meeting went down.
And up to this point, Ken Lewis, I mean, when he testified in front of Congress, he did not sell out anybody for twisting his arm. He just said, they took care of their own business at Merrill Lynch, and then I did Doug Burns. Do you see any, because I would imagine that the Attorney General's office at this point is trying to figure out whether there's any criminal, any charges. Do you see anything criminal in any of this activity or any perjury perhaps in that congressional testimony?
Working off of Brad's point in this discussion with you, in all of these cases, the core essence, the gravamen is, wait, you knew that there was a failure, a problem, a decline, and yet you went ahead and did something. If they can establish that and evidence starts developing along that lines, the answer to your question would be yes. Without it, you used the word negligent before, and then Eric's point, of course, is if the government jammed this down people's throat, that's a defense really from a legal standpoint.
Yeah, and one last thing on this point, John Thane had to come up with the names yesterday. There was a deposition yesterday afternoon at 4 o'clock in the Attorney General's office. He gave them all the names. Are those people culpable? Are those people guilty of anything in all of this? And why do their names really matter other than the amount that was given out to them?
I think Cuomo wants them to return the money. So I think that's his big issue, is why are these people getting all this money when Merrill is in the kind of financial position they're in? So whether or not they can hold on to their bonuses, we'll have to see.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about Northern Trust and whether or not you guys think that, Sheryl Crow, I brought this up in the meeting, I said, isn't she the person who said that everyone should use one sheet of toilet paper at some point? I mean, she's been out there on a lot of these issues, and yet she basically took TARP money to play at this concert. So just rhetorical question, nothing against Sheryl Crow. Should she give the money back?
No, and by the way, the people at Northern Trust, who should be ticked off? We shouldn't be ticked off. We're taxpayers. They didn't want this money. The shareholders.
But people say, and Maureen Dowd said it today, oh, well, then why did they take it? But they did.
Here's why they took it. You want to know why they took it? They were pushed to take it. In what form did they have to take it? Here's the form. If you don't take it, I mean, there was this whole push at the time. I'll never forget this. Everyone has to take it, because if you don't take it,
from the Bush economic team, we should point out.
From Paulson, the Bush economic team, and Tim Geithner was involved in a lot of this. They said, if you don't take it, if you do really need it down the road, you may not get it. And that, although, not arm twisting, kind of Tony Soprano-like, but nonetheless arm twisting. So they had to go ahead and take the 1.6. I don't blame. Hey, listen, you want to spend your money, go ahead. I'm a shareholder. I jump right out of that stuff.
Yeah, but the corporate communications departments at all these firms needs to really think about how they're doing stuff, because it just looks bad, even though you can have a deeper understanding of what's happening here.
The problem is that the world that they lived in is over, and they're not getting it.
But they're a profitable bank.
You know,
Barron's says that their stock is a buy. I mean, they're saying, you know what, we didn't do all that stuff, so why should we be punished?
But it's public perception.
No,
you know, the world they lived in is over. It's gone overnight, and they don't get it. They need a crash course in public relations. It just looks terrible.
All right, we got to go. Thanks, you guys. Brad Simon and Doug Burns and Eric Bolling. Good panel, good group. Thanks for coming in today. Greg, back to you.